How to come up with a good business, taking it from an idea to a fully functioning business. And that's what we're looking at today. And stay tuned to go through each and everything in a more detailed manner. And I'll actually break it down to show you what are probably the best ways to do it and how to actually take those steps to make those tweaks to refine your actual product or service. Yeah, so the initial phase of just going into the business, it's always very scary because when you look at an idea, you might have an idea which is very unique, or you might think that idea is already being done in so many other ways. But either way, I think when it comes to a business, it can definitely be made unique because you're trying to solve a particular problem and you have a way that you see that problem as in the market. So you might be facing it, or you might know people who are facing that particular situation. So you can actually try to understand a little better by maybe having conversations with them or even speaking to them and trying to understand, put some feelers out to understand, feedback on what is that actual problem that they're facing. Or if you have actually faced the problem, then it's easy for you to kind of penetrate and actually say, okay, this is how I can solve this particular problem. So for example, in my business, I was an international student all my life. I never had that constant one tutor or teacher who would actually guide and help me out other than maths. So all my other subjects were kind of very very mixed feelings about, and some I hated. So but then maths was completely different because I had someone constant in like to actually help me. So the same way, I wanted to give that, and I wanted to solve that particular problem by giving that solution for other students to actually find a particular tutor that they can keep forward for maybe the whole duration of their school, even whether they travel, whether they go to different schools, whether they have to move because of their parents, and any time that they move, they'll still have that consistent tutor who's always been there to guide them from a particular grade till the end of their school or whatever, right? So that's the crux of how I'm looking at solving that particular problem. So I mean, the initial phase is always to understand and the idea development. So that's your first step. Your first step is to develop that idea as much and refine it as much as possible, because as you refine your product or your service, or a bit of both, you'll understand what's that niche that you're trying to go for. What is it that you're actually targeting? Who are you going to actually target? Because you'll know all that at the start, but it's going to be it's going to be very top of the funnel, where like you have a lot of ideas coming in and you're not able to filter through those. So put those ideas on paper and actually vision that coming into fruition. So make sure you have a clear vision and a trajectory for your business, because ideally what you want to do is you want to put that idea on paper and you want to see how is it going to evolve over the next maybe 5 years. I'm not saying put that pressure on you to build targets around it, but rather than just like ideation of just scribbling through and just putting out ideas, define what's the actual problem that you're going to be solving, and through that you'll actually come to realize that you might be solving it, or you might find other better ways to solve it. So early on when I started my business, and when I had the idea of the business, it was I wanted to find a technological solution as a learning management system to track the progress of the students learning, and to track how the students actually going to improve and so on. So but I thought that wasn't going to encompass the right way of choosing the right tutor, because you're just tracking them, but you're not giving them a technological solution to actually find that tutor. So I had to go and list about how am I going to achieve that result. So because you want to achieve a particular result, what's the perfect scenario? The perfect scenario, they find someone, they like the teacher, they learn, and they succeed. And so, and everything in between you're going to be refining, and you're going to obviously build, because that's a community that you're building, and you're actually going to uh, empower your students or your tutors or your customers. Like those are your customers, and so you're going to do whatever it takes to improve that experience. And so have a clear plan, write it down if you think that will help, and scribble on a board, and actually have an idea board where it's not something that you're looking at on an everyday basis, but you have those ideas, and you're able to actually venture into newer topics, you know. So even if it might sound ridiculous, actually draw lines, and have an idea of how to go from here, from a literal app, from an app to a full round software solution. How can I get to that place? How can I track metrics? How can I um, improve the enhancements of customers by simplifying maybe payment solutions or whatever it is? Everything, put it down and actually draw or mind map this whole process. And so when you're identifying that problem, your idea is to solve, and your idea is to provide a solution for that particular problem that you've found. So, and most of the times, I would say go into business knowing that you're going to provide value, but at the same time, go into something that is a problem to yourself, because that's when it becomes personal. And when it becomes personal, you make do with no, you'll literally do anything it takes to ensure you're solving that purpose that you'll find your purpose of why you're doing this and how you're doing it and how you're going to get to it, because you yourself, if you've gone through those problems, you'll understand that landscape much better. So pick ideas that are relevant to your experiences. I would say this is still in your ideation phase. Pick ideas that are relevant to your experiences, because if you've worked in that sector before, or if you've worked in certain projects before, pick those experiences and take those experiences, and know that how can you provide justice to building upon those experiences. So let's say look at your bosses, or look at your colleagues, or look at people who are above you, who have learned more about the products and services that you've dealt with in the past. Take those experiences and learnings and see how can you one up those that experience itself. And then look at also ways that you can use your experience and all your work experience that you've gathered in the previous years. How can you take that effectively and kind of put that to the test when you're actually using, or when you're actually building a product or service? So when you're going into the business, you also want to have maybe experiences that it might not be exactly the same, but it's going to intertwine with what you're going to be doing in the future. So ideally, you want to take those experiences, you want to accept those experiences and learnings, and actually use it to your benefit. So, and this is not just refining your ideas, because once you jot down and once you have that plan in place, what you can do is you can even try to build maybe a smaller prototype, or have a drawing board where you have the actual app screens or a software screen, or how is it going to go, like what's the flow going to be, what's the customer going to see, how are they going to move to the next step. So ideally what you want to do is you want to refine. This is going to be very specific to the tech side, because that's where I have obviously initiated it, my business, and so a lot of it will be coming from that perspective. So if you look at it, you'll need to understand the visual aspect of how the app works, or the software works, or the services that you're going to provide. How is that going to work out? So and so you need to understand and look to maybe even do a market research, because sometimes market researchers can be very useful. So, and sometimes it's really dead waste of time. And I say this because there are so many businesses that go into market research thinking that this is what they're going to do, this is how they're going to solve it, and so they keep doing research, and they end up in a completely different idea, because what they thought about the product, or what they thought about the problem, was something completely different from what the market needs, or they misjudged how the market will receive it, or whatever. And so for whatever reason that they went into doing the market research, they were very biased in their ways of going into that market research. So when you want to take away all that bias away, and ideally what you want to do is you want to validate and you want to get as much information from that pool of resources that you're actually doing this market research. You want to validate your product, or you want to validate your project or your services that you're going to offer, and then refine and iterate the ideas based on feedback. You can obviously always improve, but understand one thing, that when you're trying to improve, don't just have some thoughts about certain things and be like, okay, yeah, I'm going to tweak this because it's going to make it better. Have a thought process of why you're going to do this tweak and how is that going to impact, and what is that particular feature, or what is that particular change going to solve in the bigger picture. So that's what you need to understand, because sometimes you might think that this one problem is going to be a solution, or it's going to be a solution to a big problem, but in the outset of things, that one little thing that you changed requires a lot of change in your business idea, but it's not actually impacting the end goal. So you need to understand those things. So, and then go into like market analysis and try to that's the second thing. So market analysis is your second thing, where you're going to analyze the target market and analyze where you're going to find your customers, how you're going to find them, and see if there are any competitors in that particular sector that you're working in. What are the strengths and weaknesses? You can do all this, all the MBA SWOT analysis and so on. But ideally what you want to do is you want to have some feedback. You want to have some feedback on what you can visualize as a product. And if you have a product visualization, or if you know tools where, like, let's say for example, if you have a website, or if you have details for all these particular things that you want to create, it's easy for you to read through and say, okay, this is what I'm aiming to do, and this is what I want to improve on, this is what I want to refine. So like, from my initial idea of wanting to be a learning management solution or a software solution in terms of on a website application, to moving to a mobile app, and which also consists of a web app and so on. So it's actually just opening up the doors to many things. So how did I get there? It's because I was able to see that the learning management solution can only effectively, help maybe 30% of the students that I am actually helping right now. Because when you're looking at the pool of resources, or your pool of your prospects, right? You will see that a lot of the customers that want your particular product or service is not the same type of people that you initially thought about. So you keep refining. So from learning management solution, who's that going to help? It's probably going to help the teachers the most. Whereas if you're looking at it from who's your main customer, who's bringing you the money, that's the students. So if the student, what do they like? Because they might like a mobile app because that's more friendly and that's more user friendly, and you can actually engage with people. So if that's the case, then you'll need to shift, because that's going to give you a better customer experience. So yeah, ideally try to understand that, and then from market analysis of trying to identify trends, opportunities, and how you can actually develop from there, go into a more sophisticated business plan. And I say this business plan is not as a joke, or it's just something that you can just write down and say, okay, this is how my revenue model, this is how I'm building the company, and this is how I'm going to bring in the money. That's not just it. Because you need to have a clear vision and a trajectory for your business. And what I mean by clear strategy or a clear vision is, how does this meet your end goal? But at the same time, how am I going to get there? What are the steps that I'm going to take? Because too much of a fast growth will obviously just leave you in shambles. It's not going to help you. So you need to understand that when you're taking forward certain steps, how can I develop the business plan? How can I outline those goals? How can I refine it? How can I keep my messaging very clear to people or investors or accelerated programs or whoever I'm going to speak to? keep things as simple as possible, but as concise and clear as possible, because they need to understand what you're trying to say. if if you need to explain your business more than a minute or two to anyone, that means you haven't refined and you haven't thought about it enough. So it needs to come out, like, you need to wake up and just be able to say, nail it, like a minute or two. In a minute, you need to be able to just spit it out and say, this is exactly what I have, no, this is exactly the problem I'm solving, and how am I solving it. So if you can't do it, please refine on those things. And when you're refining on those things, also build your, maybe a deck or very simplified deck of how you see your business actually taking forward. So, and then you can actually look at registrations or the legalities around it, because legality, if and I would say rather do your registrations before registrations after you find out any legal terms or anything, like any legalities or specific requirements for your service or your industry you might have. So go into researching about those legalities, and then go ahead and business do the registration. So first is your idea development, then your market research, and then you're going into legal, like legalities and compliance and so on for your particular industry and your business. And from there you take it to the next step, where you're going to actually register your business. And once you've registered your business, then you can start working on branding and marketing and how to actually get the word out that you actually exist. So there's a separate video that I have for what types of companies and how to actually register your company and so on. If you want a more detailed explanation, please watch that. And if not, if you really need help in terms of anything to do with the business processes, or setting up those business plans and so on, please hit me up. I'm happy to help you. So yeah, so after that, then you're ideally going to go into whether you're looking at a product development or a service development, or building a product itself. You're going to work on how to actually build that product. So over the years or over the weeks that you work, because I had a 3-year, like I was working on my business for at least 3 years before I actually went ahead and built it, and all these 3 years had small tweaks. So I found ways. So what I basically did was, in that 3 years, I started contacting customers. I started linking them up with tutors on a manual, like just using Google Sheets and just manually mapping teachers, students, manually mapping them. And then finally I found out there are certain troubles and problems that you face when doing, like, when in that particular process of finding and linking them up with a tutor. So I made sure when I was bringing out the app or the mobile application, I was solving that particular problem as well. So you'll find out, like, as you keep running, even if you didn't have the product or service right in your hand, keep trying to continually work on it. And even try to, like, if it's something that you can do without the product itself and you have to do a lot of manual labor, try to do it so that you understand the business from bringing the customer to that end cycle of actually finishing that particular purpose that you have with that customer. So then you'll understand maybe there might be some things that doesn't work, and you'll actually look to improving and refining and so on. And yeah, and once you've actually built that product, and once you've gotten into the phase of building that, not just building the product, but like actually going ahead and testing it and so on, you actually want to make sure that the product has like you've had the quality assured, and you've actually gone through the steps that it takes to test it as much as possible before hitting the market. So be able to test with family, friends, and so on, and make sure that you've completely whatever, even if it's like, because if you are going into the market with like an MVP, a minimum viable product, let's say for example that's three of your key features, and in those 3 key features, make sure those 3 key features work 100%. Please don't like leave it all laggy and slow, because that's not going to help you in any way. It's just going to, like, as you start getting users and so on, it's not going to help you solve your particular purpose, and you're going to lose out on customers, you're going to lose out on prospects, and you're not going to be happy. It's going to demoralize you. So ideally, a lot of times when we're thinking about these business decisions or business goals and so on, we're not ready to go into the details. We want the overall project, and we want that project to be built in a specific time. But I would say take time to go into these refinements of these small techniques and just feature enhancements and so on. You don't have to do the feature enhancements because you might have a prototype that's ready, you can test it. But before all that, you generally want to take as much of refinements as possible. You want to actually refine it as best as possible, so that when you're bringing out the idea to your developers, or when you're bringing out the idea to say, look, this is what I want, you need to have a clarity and vision on what you actually exactly want to bring out into market. Because the developers might have the same questions that you might have had before, and when you're manually working in this particular process, it will help you understand what problems your customers or your prospects might face, and you can actually also bring in those ideas to your developers and say, look, if we did this way, my customers will face this issue. I'm trying to break that issue. I'm not trying to be bogged down by those issues. I want to ensure that my customers don't face that issue, and that's why I want to build this product. And so when you give them those ideas, they're able to understand and visualize and picture your vision for the company. That's about it, guys. And I hope you found this useful, and if you did, please hit like and subscribe. It helps the channel a lot, and we want this channel to grow, and we want this to be useful to many others. And so help me out as much as possible, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers, guys.